Hi, my name is Kai Armstrong. I'm the product manager for the editor group in the create stage of the DevOps lifecycle here at GitLab. And I wanted to talk about a change that we made in 12.9 to how we're serving Code Sandbox and what that might enable everyone to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to walk through a few things that we've got going on and then kind of what we're thinking might work in the future. So let me pop this up. Perfect. So in 12.9, we started, GitLab.com is now hosting the assets required for our live preview in the Web IDE, which is powered by Code Sandbox. And so I'm going to open my demo project here in the Web IDE. I'm also going to open my developer tools because this will be how we look at this. And so we're going to open developer tools, check the network request. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the live preview icon right over here, which will launch our client-side live preview feature. And so when I do that, you can see that this is now loading all of these assets from sandboxprod.gitlabstatic.net. And so that is GitLab now hosting these assets. And so prior to 12.9, when you loaded this feature, we called these directly from Code Sandbox, which was great. But it did introduce some concerns for people who might not want to send their project or even kind of inform Code Sandbox that project existed. So now GitLab.com is hosting that. We've enabled this on all of GitLab.com, so it's enabled for public and private projects. In self-managed instances, this feature still has to be turned on. If you were to do this in a self-managed instance, you would reach out and you would talk to the GitLab.com hosted assets. We think that's a really good first step in enabling self-managed instances to do this, to at least retrieve some of these packages from a known trusted source, which is GitLab. One of the things we're thinking about for in the future is how do we enable self-managed customers to deal with this in a way that they might be more comfortable with. And so what I'm going to do is I've got a couple of things that are going on over here. So one of these is in my terminal over here, I've got the GDK, which is GitLab's development kit running. I've got a custom branch here that actually it's not even a branch. I've just modified a file in my local master. So let's get this started. We're going to load this. Just take a minute. Let me fire it up over here so we can see the instance. Should be the right address. So we'll just let that go and then we see that come up. Over here in my master, what we're looking for is a change that I've made to a file to change where we talk to this. And there's kind of two things. One, we put that in, there's a configuration that doesn't have an interface, but there's a configuration so you can set the URL. That's how we set the URL to the GitLab version of these. What's more interesting is I have changed that to a GitLab Pages site that I'm hosting on GitLab.com. So I'm hosting, there's a project, I'll link it down in the section below this video, but there's a project that I'm hosting that has runs GitLab Pages and has basically a build script that goes and gets the latest version of the packages that we need, puts them in the public directory, and then hosts them on GitLab Pages. I've got them running on a custom domain. That way they're available over HTTPS. And so I've modified this. We'll open this in the new tab. So this is the file that I've modified. So it's, we'll just do this. And it's an app models. Implementation. And then we're looking for line 357. You can see in my version of my local version of GitLab, this is running on custom domain of mine. And that way it's available. And this is going to change where we talk to. This Pages script, if we come back over here, this is doing everything and running it in Pages. And if I go to the domain that this is hosted at, you can see, you can kind of tell that it's Sandbox, Code Sandbox, and it's running. You can see the icon here, and otherwise there's nothing to see here. So what's interesting about this is now if I go to log into the GDK here. So this is my locally running version of GitLab, which has my modified file down here. And so wait for this to load. I've got my one-page demo project in here as well. So make sure we get the right one. Yep, this will work. So we'll open this in the web IDE as well. And let me just open the network console again so we can watch this. Got the network console. We'll go ahead and click live preview again. You can see is right now we're requesting from locally, and then you start seeing it request from my domain, which is hosted by GitLab Pages. So what's pretty interesting about this is this allows us to leverage GitLab Pages, which is not installed or turned on by default out in GitLab, but leverage GitLab Pages to then host the required code sandbox scripts. So it's sort of self-contained, which then would enable the live preview features of GitLab. And so part of what we're thinking about here for future iterations as we continue to work on this feature is adding, obviously we'll need to add a configuration field for configuring the domain where you have this hosted. The other possibility is that we include, this project or a project that the engineers put together that gets us to the right spot in terms of kind of enabling this on Pages. We're also going to work on providing documentation to do this wherever you might want to host. Essentially, the documentation will be a lot of, sort of this script. This is really what you need hosted somewhere on a static endpoint. For GitLab, we use, it's in a Google bucket, file bucket, and then our CDN is serving it. You could do this with an Amazon S3 bucket. You could host this anywhere really that you could access a static kind of root folder on a custom domain. So that's what we're thinking about for Code Sandbox. If you're interested in this in the future, or you've got some ideas about how you could make this work in your environment where you've got different requirements or you might not have internet access, let us know. Feel free to reach out to me, either open an issue on GitLab or you can find my email in my GitLab profile. But I just wanted to show off the change in 12.9, which I think is a really important change. And then we're definitely going to continue to iterate on this a little bit more and try and make this a little more user-friendly and self-managed instances. So looking forward to it. And if you've got any feedback, please let us know. Thanks.